one podcast, mining the Magic the Gathering community for salt. This is the Howling Salt Mine.
It's the Howling Salt Mine. The Howling Salt Mine.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Howling Salt Mine podcast. The podcast where we delve into those salty mines of the Magic the Gathering community, find the saltiest stories, the saltiest posts that we love, put them in our mine cart, and bring them right back up to you, our dear prospectors at home. As always, I'm your host, Sam, and I'm joined by my singular, 1 out of 2 co-hosts, Mike. Say hey, Mike.
He's taken, though. He's not single.
I know.
Yeah, that's how the whole bit started.
When I say single, he doesn't like it. And when I say singular, he doesn't like it. So
No, singular is amusing.
He's monophonic.
Yeah. They're all good. They're all good in their own times.
They're all good in their own times, indeed.
That did not need a segue.
I'm obligated. I am bound by honor to say that. And of course, you've heard him. We are joined today by our honored guest co-host, Nick. Hey, Nick.
Hi.
Tony is away on business. He's just like a busy business boy and
On
travels
business.
all the fucking time, that guy.
Haha, business.
But before we go any further, you know we got to shout them out, our nice tier patrons. And this week we have Alex Balix, Cream Bean, Prime Speaker Florian, Yafe D. Tudge, Dr. Black, Accidental TPK, Royal Flood, and ZZ. That's right. There's been a change in the roster, folks.
Ooh.
Changes in the air. Shit is happening.
I'm surprised you put it last. I would have done ZZ top.
Fucking
nice.
This is why we bring you in, Nick, you know? That's fucking...
Just slam dunks off the rip.
Yeah, that's fucking good. That's some good shit, man. Oh, love that. So I've been sick for a whole fucking week.
Yeah.
Rip.
That's what's new over here. Remember a couple episodes ago? It was either 1 or 2. I don't know. We're backlogging episodes, people. So I can't say whether it was 1 or 2. I can say in episode 102, remember when I was like, oh, I inhaled a bunch of pollen and I have bad allergies and it's hard to sing right now. Actually, I had COVID. Like I was a few days into COVID at the time. And now I'm like 9 days into COVID.
Womp womp.
Wah, wah.
Yeah, so for the last week, I've basically been trapped on the 3rd floor of my house, which thank God we have the space in which to be trapped, and just kind of doing nothing. I've been too sick to draw. I also don't want to get my germs all over people's custom tokens.
It's a good reason.
Yeah, right?
Here's your limited edition extra gloopy
Just your
slime token.
Typhoid Mary tokens across the...
I didn't want to distribute illness to the masses. Like that just doesn't feel right. I mean, other than that, I've just been watching so much fucking anime, man. Like I have a subscription to Crunchyroll and I really don't use it.
Yeah.
I've been pretty vocal about this in the past. I'm like a manga guy. Manga just fits into the pace of my life so much better than sitting down and watching hours and hours of television. But sometimes a little magical fairy called the COVID-19 virus comes through and blesses me with free time.
So here's a question. When you were sick as a kid, what was your go-to sick TV show to watch? Like, what was the thing that you would watch like during the day when you were home from school?
Star Wars A New Hope on VHS.
That's a good one.
Oh, man, that's a good one.
I agree.
I'd say it depends on where I was posted up. If I was like sick on the couch in the living room, I would watch whatever was on. Like I would just consume whatever was on at the time. But if I was posted up in my bedroom, I had a TV in my bedroom, but I wasn't allowed to have cable. So we had like an antenna, like rabbit ears antenna on the TV. So I would watch like local TV, which was usually the Maury show during the day. Watched a lot of Maury, dude.
Maury and Springer.
I didn't really watch that much Springer for whatever reason.
Okay.
It never really came on, but Maury was like it. And then it had a VHS player, and I had my PlayStation 2. So I was either marathoning the Thundercats DVD box set that I have. I have all of the Thundercats on DVD. Or I was using the VHS and watching either Gulliver's Travels, the 2 VHS version, I think maybe 3 VHSs starring Ted Danson.
Is that the cartoon or is that the there was like an ABC
live
miniseries one? Yeah, okay.
It was
Okay.
fucking.
I remember
fucking
some
good,
of
man.
those.
Yeah.
It's
I
good,
distinctly
too.
remember something about square meals and then it being like a little green cube of jelly.
Yeah, I think there is something like that. It's like, I mean, I still have them. I should put it on sometime. Or it would be Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie, which I also had as a VHS and would watch over and over and over again as a kid. What about you, Nick?
For me, it was if I was watching a movie, it was probably Hunt for Red October.
Ooh.
I got to the point where I could fall asleep because I had
That's
seen it
such
so
a
many times.
Random
Dude, I love
deep
that
cut.
movie.
What a specific pull.
That's great.
I love that movie, but I had it so memorized that I could fall asleep and wake up right as it was ending because I knew everything. I was half listening to the movie the whole time and knew exactly where everything was. And then the other one was MASH. I watched a lot of MASH because that was always on, midday during the week whenever you were sick was MASH, and that was pretty entertaining.
MASH is a show that completely passed by me. I never checked it out, never watched it, but I know it's very good.
It is very good. It's very funny.
For me, I had a setting on my VCR that once it finished a movie, it would automatically rewind it and start playing it from the beginning. So I would just put in the Mystery Science Theater 3000 movie and fall asleep and wake up and it would just be at a different part. Maybe 2 hours went by and it finished and restarted. Maybe 10 minutes went by. I would have no idea. And I just had watched it so much that I could pick it up at any point and enjoy it and say the lines along with it and stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly how it was for me with Hunt for Red October. I just knew exactly what was happening at any given point that I didn't need to be awake to be paying attention to it.
Yeah, it was truly my first comfort show. You know, how people binge TV in the background nowadays. I was doing that fucking analog with a VHS, baby.
Fucking analog, boy.
But yeah, I'm still sick. It sucks. I took a COVID test yesterday and still had the tiniest line, which was the hugest bummer because I was so ready to come down from exile. But nope. So just more anime and chilling upstairs. I tried to play some video games too, and boy, are there some fucking shitty video games on PlayStation 2. I tried to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel of the Roses, or maybe it's Duelist of the Roses. Holy shit, that game fucking sucks. Oh my God. Not only does it have very, very little to do with the actual Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game, which listeners will know, I just played again for the first time. So it's fresh in my mind.
Not another Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah, I was about to say, somehow Sam found a way to make this about Yu-Gi-Oh! Impressive. It's really impressive when you think about it.
Just give me this one, please, bro. So it takes the combat system, it puts it on a grid for some reason, but it's not like a tactical grid because everything can just move one space. So it's not like some units can move really far across the map and other ones can't, and you're trying to be tactical with your movement. It's everything can only move once per turn. Then you have energy, mana that accumulates every turn that you spend your cards on, not something in the card game. And 2, it gives you 3 random starter decks out of 15. And 10 of the random starter decks just fucking suck. And you'll lose pretty much every game you play with them. So I played 4 games. And I found this out later that turns out, depending on the name that you enter in, it generates random decks for you. And I'm why the what the fucking stupid system? Just give me all the options. So if you put the wrong name in, it's well, here's some shitty decks. You're never going to make it past the first 2 enemies.
It's a nice reflection on society when you think about it.
The means that you're born into.
Right. Sometimes you're just dealt a shitty hand in life. And maybe that translates into the Yu-Gi-Oh! Game too.
Just one final thing. On top of that, the storyline makes no fucking sense. It's 13th century England, and King Richard III is in power and trying to be overthrown by this other group. But Yugi from Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just there. And he's Henry Tudor, they're like, but Yugi, aka Henry Tudor, was in exile in France. And I'm like, why? What is this storyline? And then you meet him and he's like, hey, it's me, Henry Tudor, but I'm grow tired of that name. Just call me Yugi. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why would you make... So all the characters are from the Yu-Gi-Oh show, but they have completely different relationships and historical character names. Like you fight Seto Kaiba and he's like, my name is actually like Clark Cromwell or something. And you're like, why? He's like, but don't call me that. Call me my anime name. Like, why even give them new names then? Who made this fucking story?
This is the least unhinged anime plot that I've heard, to be honest with you.
Dude, I mean, true, but it's like, it's so fucking just completely nonsensical.
It almost sounds like it was originally a different game, and then they like last minute reskinned it because Yu-Gi-Oh is popular. And like, oh, how do we actually make this sell? It's like, well, we just slap a Yu-Gi-Oh logo on it and call it a day.
Like literally, like, and you fight all the same enemies that are in the Yu-Gi-Oh show, like Weevil Underwood and Rex, like the dinosaur deck guy. But again, they all have these like historical names. And the translation's bad, so they, instead of calling him King Richard III, they just call him Richard III all the time. So and for some reason, if you're not in an actual battle, they crop everything in the game, all the dialogue, all like the open map world stuff. They crop it into this like thin widescreen bar where like the top 4 inches and bottom 4 inches of your screen just aren't being used. They're just black. Like, what is this cinematic cut that you guys are going for these fucking shit cutscenes?
The Snyder cut going on over here.
Oh man, it was infuriating. Anyways, that's my tiny Yu-Gi-Oh rant.
Would you say it was salt inducing?
Dude, like, 1, excellent segue. 2, I was fucking raging, man. I was going into like GeoCities forums from like 20 years ago to try to figure out how to play this fucking game. And those still did not help.
I can't wait for someone to be like, oh, actually, it doesn't have any of that historical stuff. That game doesn't exist. You were just like COVID.
Fever dreaming. Yeah, this is a pure fever dream. None of this actually happened.
You were playing a War of the Roses game and superimposed the Yu-Gi-Oh characters on top of it.
I just took a little too much Robitussin and I was just laying on the ground. I like wasn't even playing a game. I didn't even get that far, man.
Yeah, there you go. Truth comes out.
Oh, yeah, but it did make me fucking salty. There's nothing worse than wasting 3 hours of your day trying to like hook up an old system, figure out how to play this game, be like, it must be good.
So wait, how did you come to own this game?
So that's the interesting part. I don't know. I have an empty, unlabeled CD-ROM jewel case with this disc in it, and I just have it. And I played it at some point because there was save data. There was like old save data. So I don't know how I've experienced this game in the past, but I did at one point play it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, the jury's still out. Like the fever dream thing could be true. Like I can't say that didn't
You like
happen.
fever dream, eBay ordered it.
Yeah.
Somehow it like appeared in your collection.
Is it a ripped CD? Like, is it a hand labeled Duel of the Roses CD?
That would be so perfect. It's like, what is this? Like finding like the VHS in the Ring or something. And it's just haunted me ever since I watched it.
Amazing.
Oh, God. Anywho, we're not here to talk about horrible video games.
And we're definitely not here to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh, despite what Sam tries to do every episode.
We're here to talk about salt, everybody.
Hey, we got there.
So let's do it. Let's dive into the mine. I got some salty stories queued up here. Let's fucking rip it, boys. Let's get into the salt.
But Sam, what is salt?
Great question, Mike. Salt is frustration in the game, as we like to say. It's really an umbrella term, how we like to use it here in the salt mine. Salt can be anything in a game of Magic that gets you frustrated. It could be something small, like maybe a lot of removal is getting pointed towards you in a game and you don't think that it's quite justified. Or maybe it's a bigger example of Salt where you're trying to play an upgraded precon game and somebody's playing fast combos. They're really not honoring that pregame conversation and really not putting in the effort to try to balance power levels. Or maybe they're just outright pub stomping and it's a really high Salt situation and they're just trying to crush you because it's fun for them. And, they're a small, tiny person and they suck. Salt comes in many different forms. And we talk about it so that we can learn from it and hopefully not be salty in a future game. It's an educational podcast, as we like to say. So I have 3 lovely stories here that came to us by way of the internet. You guys ready to jump in?
Absolutely. Hit us with one.
So I could do it.
Hit me.
So this first one comes to us from Reddit, the EDH subreddit, our old stomping grounds. And this post comes to us from our buddy Taxation's Thrift. So if you see Taxation's Thrift around the subreddits, give them an upvote. You know the drill. Spread that goodwill. And the post is titled, "Every deck I want to make seems to piss people off." I don't know if this is unfortunate that Tony's missing this one or if this is great that Tony's not here. But there's some parallels, I have a feeling.
I'm excited.
And the story goes, I don't know if it's just how I have fun with Magic, but something about the commanders I pick seem to be the ones that make people the saltiest. I had a fun Ingathrod deck, but my friends all hated Mill so much that I literally disassembled it because they started refusing to play against it. Then I built Tiny Bones, and while nobody is refusing to play against it, I get grumbles, and the consensus online is that most people hate playing against him. So, looking to the future, I'm scrolling through random legendaries on EDH Rec and looking for commanders I might want to build, and I run into the Sen triplets. They seem cool. Wouldn't you know it, they're known to be annoying as hell at a table. Is there something wrong with me? Lol. I need help picking a commander that other people won't hate to sit down with. I know I can't make everyone happy all the time, but my track record is abysmal. The only deck I have right now that people seem to enjoy playing against is Jury, but I want more than just one option when I go out to play. If it helps, my favorite color combos are Dimir, Rakdos, or Grixis. Any suggestions would be much appreciated.
Look up. It's not you. Society is wrong. I say as the resident Mill and Tiny Bones and Rakdos kill your shit player and have built Memnarch and all those fun decks. I'm with Op here. I think people just need to suck it up and deal, It's all fair.
Yeah, I somewhat agree, but I also I do acknowledge that we do live in a society, and there's cultural rules kind
in
of
a society.
And there's something to be said for when the strategy that attracts you most is denying other players resources, because that's like what all
it
of
just
those
means you like to have fun.
Yeah, Dimir, Rakdos,
Sure.
and Grixis are like usually pretty salty, control heavy kind of colors.
Yeah, and also Tiny Bones, you're denying people cards. Ingathrod, you're denying people like things in their library. It's always an edge case, but it gets people's goat in the same way. And then Sen triplets, you're denying people their turn.
And you're stealing their cards too, right?
Yeah, and their cards.
Sen triplets fucking
So
sucks.
it's like the worst resource to deny. So that is something that's like definitely has a bit of a taboo around it. Not necessarily in the same way that Infect does or even land destruction, but like generally people going into a commander up to a certain power level are all looking to kind of build their own stuff up and then slam into each other with like these big mountains of cards and stuff and have these big board states and do interesting things.
T-ball magic.
Yeah, exactly. And stealing resources from people innately is like not doing that. And so can feel awkward in those power levels. Once you get to like kind of trashy upper power levels of stuff, like it's fine to throw some of those effects in. But it is different to build an entire deck around that theme.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say here as well, Mike, is like, I think that this is a power level problem because these commanders are fine to play at the right power level. If you're playing a high power Magic, like high power casual, if you want to go by like the 1 to 10, I'm talking about your 8s here. right before CDH. We like to call it trash magic. It's basically the high power, everything goes. You're not quite at CDH, but maybe you've got combos, you've got tutors, you've got fast interaction and stuff like that.
Stacks, mill.
Yeah, stacks, mill, all those kind of strategies are like welcome in that space, but you need to have your play group on board for that. And if you take some of those saltier strategies and pull them into a lower power level group where maybe people aren't quite ready to deal with that or to interact with that or to navigate that puzzle that you're creating, you're going to run into some salt.
Yeah.
I get it. Lots of times I see commanders and the mechanics are enthralling. I'm like, this seems so fun, man. Send triplets. I'm stealing stuff. I'm getting that value. Like, this just seems so interesting. But once you play it, the social mechanics of it are very different than like the card mechanics. And I think this is something we run into a lot in our play group where we sometimes will get attracted to a deck that is inherently going to piss off your opponents almost immediately. You can kind of embrace that and push it into that higher power level where that's something that's a little bit more fair to be dealt with. Or generally speaking, you retire the deck or you pivot or you make a big change to it so it doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I mentioned Tony at the top of this post because this is something that he runs into a lot. He gets attracted to these like powerful commanders and these really interesting deck strategies that mechanically are very exciting and fun to think about how they work at the table. But like the result of those mechanics are you're like knocking somebody out in one hit on turn 4 or like stealing all their shit with, Rubinia and stuff like that. I think it's more of like a social question here and less about like the type of commander that you want to play and more about like where can you play that commander,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I would add would be, let's say you tried to have the talk with the play group. They weren't interested in going to the higher power level. Could you take those commanders and build them down a bit, right? Like the one example that comes to mind is like my Mogus deck is creatureless intentionally. So like you can build a like otherwise degenerate deck that has like very interesting and weird build restrictions that gives it a kind of inherent weakness that makes it a bit more fair for the kind of casual pods that you might be playing in. But that's not a guarantee either, right? Like it's still, you kind of do have to expect that you're going to be arch enemy when you go into those games and people are going to target you out. But that would be the other thing I would say is like, can you depower the decks so that you still get your kind of interesting thrill mechanically, but it's not as pushed or broken that it's going to be kill on sight every time people see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The post does explicitly ask for like, what are some commanders that you could go into, right, that wouldn't evoke some of this?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think the broad category is commanders that focus a little bit less on the other player's board states. Something that's like just a little more on the not full on solitaire side of things, but like doing more of its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And having the win con be based about like building up a board state and getting out combat damage. If you build a deck with that kind of restriction of like the goal is to get someone out through combat damage, that can sometimes also just like immediately adjust the deck into kind of a play pattern that is maybe more of what the experienced people are looking for is. But it also depends on pod composition, because if your friends are playing like insane burn or like Thoracle combo stuff and then getting mad for like your decisions on stuff, like there is a point where your friends may just be getting upset with the decks that you're deciding to play, and like you are totally in the right. So that situation best. We don't have enough context to really judge that, but something to consider too.
The other thing I was thinking of is my penchant for clone decks and stuff like that. I think is fun. Like there are ways where you can play other people's cards without stealing them or like taking resources away from them if that's something you're interested in. And it does not nearly feel as bad as mill or discard or theft. But you're still kind of getting the effect of that more reactive style of play, which sounds like maybe Op is interested in, of like not necessarily having a perfectly clear, solitary strategy right off the beginning, but, kind of leveraging other people's decks and playing off them more. So it might be something to consider too.
Yeah, and in that same vein, decks that are like graveyard reanimators that reanimate out of your opponent's graveyards are great ways to steal your opponent's creatures, usually with a lot less salt. We've talked about this before on the show. There's like hierarchy of card theft and how salty it makes people. Send triplets has got to be number one. Like stealing shit right out of their hand is
That or
fucking
Memnarch, yeah.
awful.
Memnarch is up there too.
Yeah, Memnarch's terrible because it's just a loop that's going to steal everything eventually. Threaten effects, active treason, things like that steal somebody's creature for a single turn aren't always that salty, but generally you're sacking the creature or you're attacking with it and it's dying, so that can get some salt. And then stealing off the top of somebody's deck, like with a Gonti effect or something like that, that's usually a little bit below that. Sometimes they'll feel like the loss of that value, but usually you're stealing things face down, so it isn't quite the same of that like visual trigger as like seeing the card leave your hand or spending the resources to cast it and seeing it go to your opponent. Reanimating from an opponent's graveyard falls even below that from my perspective, because usually it's something that they've discarded or it's a creature that's already died, and many decks don't have a reanimation plan. So once it's there, it's just kind of gone, and you can then use your reanimating cards to steal those or reanimate from your own graveyard. Like there's a lot of strategy that you can do there, and still similar to like the clone deck that Nick was proposing, you can still have that vibe of like taking your opponent's resources and using them against them without generating the same amount of salt. And there's a shit ton of that stuff in Dimir, Rakdos, and Grixis.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Those are like the villain colors too, right? So like the strategies innately are going to lean into that angle a little bit more. Like white and green are very much more the like, oh, I go build a bunch of tokens and make a really wide board state. There are definitely creature types and stuff that focus on that in Grixis, but for the most part, blue, black, red adds up to a pretty villainous color pair.
Yeah, I'm playing the Nicol Bolas colors. Why is everybody always saying I'm the arch enemy?
Yeah. How am I the Bolas in this salt mine right now? Yeah, exactly. Man. One other parting thought on this. We talked about how you can play these decks at a higher power level. You can sometimes have these at a lower power level, but it needs to be like a sometimes deck. Like we do this with Nick's Mogus deck, where every once in a while, we just want to have an archenemy game, and we want to play into that puzzle. If Nick was playing Mogus every single week, I think we would be very frustrated and asking him to take it apart or stop playing it. But if we get to play against it like once a month or once every 2 months, it's kind of awesome. It's like a nice reset. It's a very different vibe than any of the other decks, and it plays very differently.
Yeah.
And sometimes those salty decks can be a treat. But again, you have to sign up for the fact that you're going to be the archenemy in that game. You're going to piss people off. That's something that you have to accept walking into the game, because the dynamic is going to immediately flip and target you, Yep. So I think that you can still enjoy the things you like. There's just a time and a place, and then, pick up some of these other strategies that are out there. And I think you can still kind of scratch that control itch without making your opponents so salty.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, right? If you're that type of player, you kind of inherently can't be the salty player to some extent. Now, I'm not saying that I don't get salty by any means, but I will say I think when I knowingly play a deck that is going to induce salt, I am generally a bit more zen-like and calm in dealing with interactions and stuff like that.
It's also because people are always like, they're already busy being the salty player at the table, so you don't have the chance to be.
But like, if I play Mogus and I get some, very painful enchantments out, I'm not going to get mad when the enchantments get removed. It's like, yep, that was expected. Like, that's kind of the breaks of how that deck works, right? And it's up to me to, work my way around that puzzle the same way that everybody else is too. So there's definitely an aspect of like, you have to have the mentality of like, being okay with being the arch enemy, like Sam said, and embracing that and trying to be salt free from that perspective too.
Yeah, and also making sure your play group is down for that. Like you can straight up say, "Hey, are you guys down for kind of a salty game? I want to play my Tiny Bones deck. Like I'm gonna make you discard a bunch, and it might not be that enjoyable, but." Every once in a while, I want to have this kind of game. Your play group may be cool with that when you come to it so candidly,
Yeah, if you're trying to pull a fast one on them and be like, no, it's not that deck.
Yeah.
Well, then you kind of earned it at that point. But
so what do we think the salt rating is on this one?
To me, this is such a familiar salt, just because we've gone through this so many times with Tony. Like, I really do think that this is something that certain players just get attracted to these mechanics, and they exist for a reason. They're game pieces in this game that we love, And they're valid strategies. And often they're very good strategies, which is why they're really frustrating. That's the hard part, is that Send Triplets is wicked powerful, which is why it's salty, because it steals your shit and it does it efficiently and consistently.
Yeah.
So this is something that to me is very familiar. I think every play group has a moment where they either touch on this or are right there in this very same situation. Somebody builds a salty deck and it's like, okay, how do we start to navigate this? And I think it's important to, like we were saying, carve out those specific spaces to play those decks in your play group so that you feel fulfilled, because you don't want to completely cut this stuff out and play like lame decks that don't interest you. But your opponents also don't want to play into this salt fest every single time that they play. So it's a balance, you know, you want to have everything. It's one of the reasons why we carved out the trash Magic space in our play group, because I had gross combo decks I wanted to play all the time, and playing them into our more casual decks was incredibly unfun for all of us. So I think like embracing some of that stuff with your play group and building space for it is going to give you a lot of success.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not super salty. I sympathize a lot with op, like I mentioned, but you can't solve playgroup dynamics with deck building. And this seems like a case of that, right? Which is like, yeah, you could find the not salty commanders and you probably should have a couple of those in your back pocket anyway. But also, if that's the case, you're going to, you know, potentially be holding a grudge against the rest of your pod. And it's really something that you probably should just talk out rather than try to solve it through a deck build.
Yeah, you don't want to have resentment for not being able to kind of play the style of stuff that you want.
Right.
I agree. I think that this is like a very, honestly, a kind of nice dash of salt for a play group. I think it's like about the right amount. Just because like you get these conflicts in a play group where people are looking for slightly different experiences. And if you can talk through that, that's going to be a huge advantage for the whole group. Like then you can get on to better and more fun games, right? So I think the fact that this person's looking for ways to flex up their commander roster and looking for suggestions on like what strategies may be safer options, I think that's all positive. Not so much salt that you're over salted.
Yeah, I agree. This is good salt.
Yeah, early salt.
Good salt.
How about some more good salt?
Well, I can't promise that, but I do have 2 more posts.
I'll settle for that.
So this next one comes to us from one of our patrons, Type Null, and this post is titled, "May You Be the Judge of Me." And the story goes, "Hello to the court and executioners. You guys are both, obviously. Emoji heart. This is a long story, so feel free to edit stuff out. I'm definitely not going to do that. I appreciate when everyone says that shit. I don't get the time to edit that shit. I'm not proofreading the hundreds of salty stories we get. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Do your own editing."
Yeah, exactly.
Sam's already editing the podcast. He's not here to do the posts too.
I started listening to you guys a few months ago and have finally decided I should contribute to society. Along with this contribution, I will also provide a salty story / confessional. After listening to you guys, I have dedicated myself to try to be less salty, an admirable dedication, and learn from these stories. But God damn it, is it hard?
Did you say adorable?
Adorable. Like, it's adorable.
It's adorable.
It's adorable.
It's adorable.
It's adorable.
It's an adorable.
Hey, I'm sick.
He's a sick boy. Leave him alone.
It's
It's an
adorable.
He's an adorable sick boy.
I've been playing Magic and started with my playgroup for a solid 4 years now, but have only recently gotten back into it about 2 years ago. I'm going to name drop because he knows who he is, and I doubt he listens to you guys. But one of my friends from the group is Brennan, and he constantly king makes our other friend Gage.
Nice.
A great example.
I love
of this.
the name call out. I do appreciate that. It's like the closest to like saying it to your face you can do when you're submitting a story and not like semi-anonymously to a podcast. I'm also misspeaking now.
and we know that this has broken bad for people in the past. I think it was I forget who it was. One of our patrons had a salty story, and we got the rebuttal story, which was basically somebody being like, that is not how it happened, and I resent how you phrased that. And we were like, oh shit, okay. So hey, you never know. Let's see. So we're talking about Brennan and Gage. Brennan is always king-making Gage. A great example of this is him basically rule zeroing that he has a wedding ring in hand and says he's going to give it to Gage. What? Me and another friend, Wyatt, constantly feel that it is a 2v2 where we have to get rid of Brennan in order to do anything in the game. So that's what we do. And he complains that we target him, and he responds saying that he targets us and favors Gage, so we have to get rid of him. Another great example is a game I can remember a while back where Brennan was playing Fabine and I was playing Aragorn the Uniter. And I can't remember what Gage and Wyatt were playing at the time, and it doesn't matter to the story. Also, get fucked. It was towards the end of the game, and I was sitting comfortably at 25 life, thinking I had the win. Gage had a big board state set up, and I was expecting for Brennan to help deal with Gage's board because he was at 3 life and going to die on Gage's upkeep from a stack of enchantments that Gage controlled. I can't remember what they were exactly. So I figured he would accept defeat and help deal with some of Gage's board so me and Gage and Wyatt could duke it out. I had a spell in hand that would be able to kill Gage on my turn, but Brennan was right before me. He had Fabine, 2 citizen tokens, and Beastmaster Ascension out, and cast a spell to make him more tokens. And I countered it because I didn't want him to have a bunch of creature tokens that he could potentially swing out at everyone with and win the game. Combat comes around, and he had Fabine and the 2 citizen tokens, and the chance of hitting 4 lands on parlay to get tokens and activate Beastmaster Ascension was low, but he managed to do it. So Beastmaster Ascension activates, so he has 7 attacking creatures out, and he decides to swing them all at me. I questioned the reasoning and asked him to change attackers, but he said, if I can't win, then I'm going to take someone else out with me. I couldn't convince him, and lo and behold, Gage won the game. These are just some of the examples as to why I target him off the board so fast, because he does shit like this. What are your guys' thoughts? Am I in the wrong for targeting him? I used to do it every game because he would do that stuff, but we as a playgroup have started to try and be less salty since I have told him I was trying to change from listening to you guys. P.S. Sorry it was so long. It really wasn't that long. You're all good, type null. Couple things come to mind here. First thing, just quickly touching on the second story. The second story is the situation where your buddy Brennan is going to lose. He's going to lose to either you or he's going to lose to Gage. And you were hoping that he would lose to you, and instead he chose to lose to Gage. Come on, like
That's going to happen.
He basically did what you wanted him to do, but he attacked you and not another player. The outcome was going to be the same, that he was playing for second place and using his forces in some spectacular show before he died and left everyone else to duke it out. So that one, I think I understand that there's a pattern of behavior here, but I think
I would not be so quick to dismiss the pattern, right? And I don't think this would have been a situation if it wasn't called out that it's part of this pattern, right? No, I mean, I think I would be salty, right? If like Tony, for example, hypothetically, would always make decisions that somehow end up with Sam winning the game. I don't know. Not that has ever happened or anything like that. I would be a little salty.
You forgot
maybe
that for sure.
I feel like all those wins were earned.
Yeah, I bet you do. But no, I think it's worthy of the conversation, right? I think if it's starting to affect the play group such that like even in situations that might have gone 50-50, they're starting to like appear or have the feel of going against you because of this, then it's worth like having the talk with the group and being like, hey, you got to cut that out.
What's going on here?
Right. I don't know that we talked about this part or it didn't come up, but I could see it being valid for a period if you have like a new player and you don't want them to like get immediately squashed out of the game, and you're going to, help them out as a kind of like pseudo two-headed giant thing just to kind of get them up to speed as they're learning the game. I think that might be valid, but that should end after a certain point. And I don't even think that was the case here, but that would be like the one situation where I think this kind of like repeated king-making type situation would be somewhat okay.
Even then, take them out.
Yeah, if it's just become like a meme in the group where it's like, oh, so-and-so is going to help this person every time, I think that's problematic, right? Because you're not there to play 1v1v2, you're there to play a free-for-all, right? I think that's part of it. Like if you want to do that, play two-headed giant, right? Like do something in that space where you guys can partner up directly, and it is an explicit thing and not just a like, oh, I'm going to help him because I feel like it, and here's the resources to do it, and now he gets to win. I don't know. That just seems very strange to me.
Definitely.
You make a really good point, Nick. I do wonder if this has become a bit of like a meme in the group. Like, I wonder about Brennan and Gage's kind of emotional state when these moments are happening? Like, are they laughing and he's like, I'm just gonna kingmate Gage like I always do, and it's like, haha, it's a funny joke that this happens all the time.
Right.
Like Brennan could be in a situation where he's leaning into the joke because maybe it's like it's this funny thing that when I have a choice and I'm going to get knocked out of a game, I just choose to always hand it to Gage. And it makes my buddy Type Null really salty. And that's funny to me. That's a pattern that I could see even happening in our own play group, because we do have some of those spite plays and some of those like, hashtag respect the feud patterns, especially with like you and Tony, Nick.
Yes.
So like I could see that becoming a joke in the play group, but it's disruptive because it is imbalancing this like the 4-player free for all that you need to have.
Right.
I mean, saying that you have a wedding ring in your hand before the game even starts and saying that you're going to give it to your friend is pretty egregious. Like you don't even know if it's going to be in your best interest to give them that artifact when it comes in.
Yeah, that's pretty silly.
Yeah, and then getting mad that you get targeted because of that. It's like, well, you already basically declared that we're playing, a 2-on-1 or whatever it is, whatever that math works out to be.
Yeah.
Versus like, sorry, like, yeah, you said basically you two are teaming up against us. So yeah, we're going to team up against you. I don't know what you want from that, right? That feels a bit ridiculous to try and argue that as a counterpoint.
It's funny because sometimes we will have not this dynamic exactly, but every once in a while in our play group, we'll have two people be like, hey, we should team up, and kind of like say that vocally at the table. And inevitably, the other two people are always like, oh, that's what we're going to do? Well, then we're going to team up. And then the original team up dissolves and usually doesn't happen. It's like, no, we don't, never mind. We don't want that. We don't want it to be a 2v2. But yeah, I do wonder if this is just a joke too far. Yeah. Because if somebody is just very seriously looking at the game and trying to pass wins to their friend, my brain just doesn't comprehend that that's like something that is reasonable, that they're like, the threat assessment is here and I need my friend Gage to win. Like it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's very odd. Yeah, I mean, I think I hope you're right. I hope that it's just like, this became a joke that we thought was funny for way longer than it was actually funny, and it's, not funny to everybody else anymore, but we're just too obtuse to realize it.
Yep.
Which is like fair, that happens, right? But I think that's why it's like worth having the discussion to be like, hey, you got to cut that shit out. This is getting old now.
Yeah.
The other cases are way worse, right? Like if it's like, oh no, they just are really buddy and they don't care. Like that's really unfortunate. Like, I don't know. That's like, you got to start either playing a different format or something else entirely if that's how it's going to go. And be like, all right, cool. If you want to play a 2v2, we can play a 2v2, but we're going to be explicit about it just the same way that you guys are. It's like, okay, well, if he's getting a wedding ring, then he's getting an engagement ring or whatever you want to call it, right? Like, I'll give you something too. Like, me and him are going to partner up, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like play some two-headed giant if that is the vibe that you truly want.
Yeah, you can do it with commander decks and it'll be fun. You'll have a good time, but it is a very different game. And it's not really fair if you're wanting to play, that free-for-all format.
Yeah, like regular
That's a very
EDH,
different thing.
Like,
yeah. I do wonder if Gage is enjoying that attention.
That's also
or
very
if he's
true.
like, I don't want to get king made over and over again. That's like a different thing. Like sometimes people are just down to get the win however.
Yeah.
But like if they start noticing the pattern as well, like you want to feel like you're earning your stuff too, not like someone's just giving you card advantage in the game all the time. So that could be another avenue. They may need to be a part of that conversation.
Truthfully, I really dislike when I get king made. Unless it's like a really silly game and like the vibe is just goofy. Like sometimes you are in a game and it's so clear that everyone's just playing for second place and it's a little bit funnier and like more spite plays and stuff like that. You can kind of tell when the vibe is there. But if that vibe isn't there and I win off a king make, it doesn't really feel good. Like it doesn't feel like I earned it. It's almost like someone else misplayed and I won because of that. You know what I mean?
Which in Tony's defense is usually what actually happened, is he just made an egregious misplay that you were able to capitalize off of directly.
But they're so often a misplay that we're pointing out.
Oh,
and
no,
then he's like,
definitely in the moment. We're
them.
like literally trying to talk him out of making the misplay and he still does it. And then he's like, well, I don't know. Sam, I guess wins. It's like,
and then it's like, but it could have been whatever. He could have gotten anything. He maybe doesn't have the mana to go infinite if I deal with that.
Yeah, infinite colorless mana, what can a Agave deck even do with that?
Look, three times
Certainly
is a
not
trend,
play a
man.
skull clamp and draw his entire deck.
Right.
Never mind. I felt great about that win. I take back what I just said. I felt fucking awesome about that.
Yeah.
Because that, to me, that's not a horrible misplay. That's just bad
No,
targeting
that one was a
prioritization.
terrible misplay.
Yeah.
He's been roasted for that enough, though, that I don't feel the need to get back into it.
I think we have an episode where we specifically
Oh,
roasted
definitely.
about
We have
that.
an
Definitely
entire
do.
episode.
Probably on the
Yeah.
back 50 of
Yep.
the podcast if
Yeah.
people want to look for it.
Look, I mean, 1 time's an accident, 2 times a coincidence, 3 times is a trend. That's all I'm saying.
Oh man, love you, Tony. Appreciate the dubs, dude.
Well, what's the salt rating on that one?
That's pretty high. I would be salty. If this was like a
Yeah.
consistent thing that was happening week over week and not just a thing that happened occasionally that was a joke, I would be pretty salty about it.
Like, I can see this being really funny if it's like the random incidental damage that doesn't matter. Like I have to hit someone for 1. It happens to be so and so. I can
Yeah.
also see it sometimes being funny if it's truly like I can kill one person or the other person. It's truly a 50-50, and I go with that one option. But if it's like multiple incremental steps all the way through the game of, okay, well, I'm going to use this piece of removal on that person's thing. I'm going to hit them for a little extra damage. I'll give the extra draw off of Secret Rendezvous to this person. I'll play the wedding ring on this,
Yeah.
repeated effects to like truly kind of team play. It's a different game, and that's
Yeah.
not funny anymore. That's just super annoying.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think this is pretty high salt for me. It's just like, I'm here to play EDH. I'm not here to play some weird version where targeting priority is always skewed away from a specific person. And also, it's just such a foreign concept to me. Like, we have hashtag respect the feud. Like, we get kind of spiteful in our pods sometimes. Never have I ever even considered hashtag respect the alliance, like I'm never coming into a game being like, I'm really going to favor Mike in this game.
Yeah.
Like I come into every game with, 3 of my best friends and I'm like, I'm going to crush them all and hopefully win. Like that's the point of the game.
Yeah.
It's just such a weird vibe to be like, I'm just going to like help them so much. It's like, does Gage need the help? I do still wonder how Gage engages
Feels.
with this.
Yeah.
It's like, do you like this? Like, are you giving them a benefit too? Like, what is happening? Is Gage just so cool? And you're like, notice me, senpai? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Just straight up simping.
I feel like the closest we get to like favoritism of another player like this is when we do like Secret Santa stuff.
Yes.
We're always rooting for the person that we built for, but in that case, everybody is doing that with
Right,
another
it's
player
still
in this
symmetrical.
weird kind of like mismatched, way of having that.
And there's an expiration date on that too.
Yeah, and if it's between me and you, pretty usually it's gonna be playing for yourself. So
Also, like a few months go by and like,
Yep.
yeah,
Mike is no longer charmed when I play Gigantic Librarian. He's
Yeah,
like,
I'm
we have to
removing
stop
it.
the combo tag.
Playing the board
It's like we're all
wipes.
going to die.
I'm like, here's how much mana he needs from this point on, and
I'm
here
like,
are
you
his
don't
tutor
want me
targets.
to win, Dad? And you're like, no, I fucking don't.
So true.
Oh man, well, good salt. That's a weird one.
That's a doozy. Yeah.
You did
that's
you
a
did follow
doozy.
it up with some good salt.
I know. Let's see if we can get the hat trick here with number 3. So we got one more here. This one comes to us by way of our website, thehowlingsaltmine.com or howlingsaltmine.com. Both are going to get you there. And this one comes to us from our buddy Arthur, Locus of Rage. And the post is titled, Am I the Asshole? Why, yes. Yes, I am.
Appreciate the honesty right off the front.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. Hello, fellow mine engineers. I hope your OSHA certifications are all up to date for the upcoming safety audits.
I'm sorry, it's not OSHA. Didn't we determine that it's like
Yeah, it's MSHA.
Yeah, it's MSHA.
MSHA? Yeah.
MSHA, I guess
Yeah, they have their
probably call
own
it.
separate safety organization. It's very important you know this. God, doesn't know anything.
You're not even a mine engineer.
A manager would know that.
This is my salty confession. Ah, hell yeah.
Love it.
This is
Love it.
perfect. We needed a
Perfect.
salty confession to wrap this one up.
It's been a while.
Ooh, it has been a while. About 2 years ago, I got my wife and my stepson into EDH. I've been playing for almost 10 years with the same group of friends, and I was really happy to get both my loved ones into the hobby. But there's one caveat. I'm an absolute shit person to teach a new hobby/game. Nonetheless, They managed to pick it up and are on their way to becoming good players. On the ominous day, my wife was playing her Rin and Seri cats and dog themed deck. My stepson was playing his Toski Voltron deck, and I was on an Omnath Locus of Rage deck. The game goes relatively well, with my wife keeping Toski in check by removing problematic auras from him. Me keeping my wife in check with a few elementals. I was very slow building a board state and having very little landfall triggers. And my stepson keeping me in check by forcing me to keep blockers to not die to said Toski. Here's where I became the asshat. My stepson drops a World Slayer and proceeds to explain what it does. Let's just real quick explain what World Slayer does for the people at home.
Is that the sword?
Let's do that. Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is the big sword.
The big old sword.
So World Slayer is a artifact equipment. It costs 5, and it has an equip cost of 5. And it says whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy all permanents other than World Slayer. Toski, notably, is indestructible. All right. My stepson drops a World Slayer and proceeds to explain what it does. My wife asks him to repeat, and then she asks him again, to which I say, he said it twice now. I know.
Oh,
I know I'm the asshole, but my mouth spoke faster than what I intended.
oh no.
This is a good
boy.
confessional, dude.
Oh,
It's
no.
good. The salt is good.
Ugh.
I kept blockers to avoid nuking the board, but my stepson decided to swing at my wife. She declares no blockers, even though she had creatures on the board. To which I promptly ask, what the fuck? You won't block the World Slayer wielding Toski? She replied,
Oh, no.
She replied, nah, I want the board wipe. With the trigger resolving, I angrily scooped, telling her that she gave the game to Toski while she was telling me that she could rebuild her board. Turns out she thought World Slayer was a one-time effect, and she didn't want to ask about the card since I'd been an asshole when she asked for what the card does.
Oh, boy.
God.
Oh boy.
We've been together for 10 years, so she knows I'm not angry at her. I'm just an ass. I'm trying my best to stay positive when teaching new players. I just don't know how. I've apologized to her profusely, and I'll do my best to not have this situation come up again. Thanks for reading. Don't forget to put on extra PPE during your descent into the mine. Oh, I forgot. Toski won the game. Arthur.
We knew that. You didn't,
Lesson fucking
you
learned
didn't have to
right
tell
there,
us
man.
that separately. We knew Toski won.
Lesson learned.
That's such a fucking good one.
Wow.
First of all, thank you for your honesty, Arthur. That's some fucking some petty salt, my friend. And I feel you. I've been there before.
Oh boy.
There's something unfortunate that happens when you're teaching new players a game and you get tilted during the game. You just cast off the teacher garb. Like in that moment, Arthur was no longer a teacher. He was like, "There's a fucking World Slayer on the board. We have to deal with it." Like he didn't give a shit about instructing you to the finer points of what World Slayer does and the board states it creates. He needed it to be fucking dealt with.
Yeah. That's one way that I find can be helpful when you're teaching new players. Like, and this World Slayer comes out and you're worried about it and it's a big threat and stuff. First of all, let's just acknowledge the obvious. You can't be like, he said it twice already. If someone doesn't understand what's going on, that's like, that can't be it. That just can't be it. It can't be the response.
That's some straight up foot and mouth disease right there.
Yeah. Yeah. You just chomping on your big toes with that one. Like that said, if you're worried about the World Slayer, you can still be in kind of a teaching frame and be like, that's a big problem. It's attached to an indestructible creature, so it'll happen again. He's going to be able to make good use of this, and you can talk through the stuff that it eventually leads to what gets you salty in this story of, getting all your stuff wiped and a decision that doesn't make sense that someone makes and being upset about that. You can teach through a lens that is still helpful, and is also in a pretty normal way to interact during a game where you would just talk through, the threat that a new piece is presenting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I'm paraphrasing or reading into it too much, but my gut says that the reason that Op reacted the way they did was because they were to Sam's point, right? They switched out of teacher mode and into kind of panic mode, and like
Yeah.
the pre-salt phase of the brining was occurring at that point. Like they knew what was coming, and they were getting
Yeah.
upset by it just by the fact that the card was on the board, and like
Yeah.
all bets are off at that point. And that's what the fuck up was like, oh yeah, I think you're right. Like they definitely should have explained it better, but I also don't think the reason that this whole situation happened in the first place is they were just not in the headspace to be able to explain it. They were like, oh, fuck, I'm screwed. I'm mad about it. And that kind of reverberated elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is entirely it. Again, I appreciate the honesty. I think sometimes you just say the wrong thing and it snowballs. It's salt balls, you know? But oh my God, it's just so fucking you said it twice now. Like, ooh, baby, dude, that ain't it.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Beautiful.
I can't imagine saying those words.
I have a small anecdote from yesterday morning. So it was like 7:30 in the morning. I'd like just woken up. I was like half awake, like reading my phone, and Laura was getting ready, and then she like saw a spider on the door and threw her sandal or something at the door really loudly. I was like, what the hell is going on? She's like, it's a spider. I'm like, get over it. That was not the right thing to say. And I subsequently apologized. But that is how I can sympathize with what Op is feeling in this situation of like,
sure. Yeah, I think we've all like snapped and said the wrong thing before. Like it, and it's unfortunate when it's your partner on the other end.
Yes.
I think everybody can sympathize with sticking your foot in your own mouth every once in a while.
Yep.
Oh man. And if people don't know what that turn of phrase is, it means saying the wrong thing. It's not like a toe thing.
I mean, it could be.
Oh boy.
Oh,
what do we think the salt level on that one is?
Oh,
it's spicy. It's more spice than salt, but it's a nice spice.
Yeah.
The right amount of heat.
It's enough for a family of 3 for sure.
Dude, I think it's the perfect amount of salt. This is exactly what I look for in a salty confessional. There's a great setup. There's an admission of guilt even before the crime even comes to pass. And then in the moment of it, it's like, yeah, I know. Like he says, I said it twice. And then the next thing he says is, I know. Like we all had that. We all had a visceral reaction. And Arthur here was like, yes, I know. Like, oh man, it's just perfect. I love that shit because everybody gets salty. Everybody says the fucking wrong thing. Everybody fucks it up. And like sometimes games are won and lost in those moments. And that's just magic, baby. That's just how it happens. It's fucking so good though.
It's beautiful.
He said it twice. It's so incorrect.
This is gonna be a meme. I think I can feel it.
It really reminds me of the story that we had with Covert Go Blue, where the guy was saying his life total and not marking it down.
He already said it.
And he's like, dude, relax. I already said it. It's like, okay, all right. I'm sorry. But
oh boy.
Oh shit.
Hey Sam.
Yannick?
Is it that time? Am I doing it right?
You're doing it.
You're doing it.
Is that time?
Just keep reading off the teleprompter.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I think it is that time of the week, Nick.
Sweet.
It's the time of the week that comes every week.
Then we say Mike.
Oh no, say every motherfucking week.
Every motherfucking week. I'm doing terrible.
It's the time of the week where we say
this whole raw cut as a blooper.
It's the time of the week where we say, Mike.
Mike.
What's the salty card of the week?
The salty card of the week this week is...
Once there was this boy who told his friend about a salty card every week, and when they finally let him talk, the salt would rain down bright white
But before it could explain it, his friends will sneak a song in. Mike, 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 ooh. And that is by the Crash Test Dummies.
Yeah, it is. That was great. I enjoyed that.
Requested by our patron Runage. Thank you for the request, Runage. I love the Crash Test Dummies because growing up and having a very, very bassy voice at a young age, it's like one of the few bands out there that sings in a really deep register all the time.
Such a weird song too. Like I don't understand the lyrics at all.
Yeah, I'm like,
Like
what's the
weird
point of this?
anecdotes
Why'd you
about
write
like
this?
strange things that are happening in your town. I don't know. It's such a weird song, but I do thoroughly enjoy it. It's so fun.
There's like a verse about a kid who got in a car accident and his hair turned white, and then the next verse is about a girl who has like moles and got like made fun of in gym class.
Yep.
And like the moral that they each come to is like, well, someone out there probably has it worse than me. And I'm like, I guess that's a moral, but like so barely is that a moral to the story, you know? Like,
yeah.
Anywho.
Well, thanks, Sam. That was a lovely salty song of the week.
Thanks, Mike.
The salty card of the week this week is Sarah Ascendant.
Ooh, that's interesting. That's an interesting one.
It is 1 mana, 1 white mana for a creature, a human monk with lifelink. As long as you have 30 or more life, Sarah Ascendant gets +5/+5 and has flying. And it's a 1/1 normally. So
this makes me
Nick,
salty.
does this one make you salty? Yeah.
The problem with Sarah's Ascendant is that you only see it as like the first play of the game.
Yeah.
You never see it later in the deck. I don't know why, like just the statistical gods always make it so that it's somebody's first play of the game because you never see it later.
You're keeping that hand. You're keeping that hand with the
and
6/6
maybe that's
flyer.
why, right? Maybe that's it.
There's no reason not to.
But like you're never seeing it late game, right? It's just not a factor. And it's like that part in particular is just like very irksome. It's like, oh yeah, cool. You got the nut draw and got the cool 1-drop that is specifically broken in this one format because our life total is higher at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a little salty by it. Sure.
How about you, Sam?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I think it's just one of those cards that like, because it's not designed for Commander, because the life total is higher, like Nick said, it's so frustrating to go against because it is so rare to have a flying blocker that early in the game. Maybe you have a hand with an answer in it, but that doesn't feel great either to drop your like Beast Within on a 1-drop that's been, by then probably gained like 12 or 18 life.
Yeah.
Personally, like I see it in CDH, I don't give a shit. I see it in high power casual like Trash Magic. That's fine too. If I see this in like a deck that is proclaimed to be a 7, it's like just don't put that in, man.
Yeah.
I don't think it immediately pushes the power level of your deck up, but I do think that it is something that decks at that lower power level will really struggle to deal with a turn 1 Sarah Ascendant. And the whole game is going to get warped around it, where you're all just trying to remove the Ascendant and immediate archenemy situation. They're going to gain a fuck ton of life, which just keeps it at that high stat level. Like it's self-serving,
Yeah. 6 life a turn is enough that it's difficult for other players to all fight through and race that 6 life a turn.
Yeah.
Like even together sometimes, and it's very difficult to force that player under 30 life to try and turn it off.
Yeah, because you're either removing the Sarah Ascendant or you need to do enough combat damage or burn damage or what have you, life loss, to get them below that threshold. And like it's just a losing race, man. And so often those decks have other life gain tricks.
Yeah, especially in the
they
deck.
fucking put double strike on it or something, like, or put some equipment on it. Like it's one of those cards that when I see it in a lower power casual game, I'm like, come on, man. Like I'd rather they run a mana crypt, honestly, in those decks than a fucking Sarah Ascendant.
Part of the reason it makes me salty is because it typically has nothing to do with the actual deck plan or like the deck build. It's like, yep, it's a 1-drop that's really good, so I'm going to include it, even if it has nothing to do with what my deck actually wants it to do. It's like the fact that I'm in white means that I can run this one broken thing that does in isolation its own broken bullshit, regardless of whatever else I'm trying to do. And that's
Yeah.
like part of what really
That is
makes
so
it salty.
true.
It's like, it's one thing, right? Like if you have a high powered card, but it is part of your deck strategy and it's like part of what conceptually your deck is trying to do, like I might be salty situationally, but I would at least understand it. But like Sarah's Ascendant is in particular, it's like it's just kind of you throw it in because it does the thing and there's nothing
Yeah.
really better than it.
Yeah.
And there's no reason not to run it. It's like, okay, well, that's pretty boring.
That's why it's so frustrating to see in Rafine, because in that deck it makes
Dude.
some sense because it's a
Yeah.
cheap creature to get out that can wear counters well, that also is evasive sometimes. Like it's exactly what you're looking for in Rafine, but it sucks to see when it comes down across the table on a Rafine deck.
And I feel like it's a 50% chance that Tony has it in his starting hand with
Right.
that fucking deck ban. And I'm so glad you said it before me, Mike, because I know I'm such a Rafine hater. I was like, I can't bring this up. But yeah, every single time Tony fucking plays Rafine, the Saracen comes out, man. And it's like, what the
That's
fuck,
what I'm
dude?
saying. It's like you always see it at the beginning of the game. It's never a late, or if it is, maybe it's just my like cognitive memory has like forgotten it because it's a non-factor and it's only a factor at the beginning of the game when nobody can do anything about it. And that's the
Yeah.
part that feels particularly bullshitty. I want to hear more about it in CDH though. Like it seems like it would actually be pretty good. And like if you're running white in CDH, you probably want that.
It's a Timna card all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It offsets the life loss. It's a cheap evasive attacker that you can get a card off of with Timna, and it sets you up for a huge Nas. So
Yeah,
it
such a
definitely
frat
sees
Nas.
play, and I feel like mostly Timna decks, but also I think Rafine CEDH probably plays it. Just other decks that I think even sometimes like Tivit decks, even some random stuff will run it just because it is a nice way to kind of build this life cushion.
And it pressures life totals hard.
Yeah.
If you are on an Adnaz deck and your opponent's on an Adnaz deck, the Saracen is going to put a 12 HP differential between both of you with each attack. Like it adds up very, very quickly. So it's pretty spectacular in CDH. I mean, I think you really need to have like Timna or something like that to give it the value that you want to have. Mike, I think we already kind of heard how you feel about this, but sum it up for us, man. How does this card make you feel?
Yeah, it's just very painful. Like Nick is saying, that the times you see it are when it's going to be most effective, and that's when it sucks the most. It's also like kind of pricey for like a card that is very easy to slot into everything, which is kind of sad. It's like 20-ish bucks, which isn't insane, but is, you know, pretty high at this point for just kind of like a beater. I think this also has like the slight reverse element of Assault, where if you get this and you don't have 30 or more life, it sucks to have in your hand. So this is one of those rare cards that can feel bad on either end of it, depending on the situation of the board state. So I think it gets a little extra bonus from that too.
Yeah.
So where do you guys think this lands in the top 300 salty cards?
I have my vote.
I have mine as well.
Write yours down, listener, and let us know what it is.
Play along at home.
Play along at home.
Play the Jeopardy music, everybody.
All right. What do we got?
Mine is 123.
I was 110.
Well, Sam takes it with 123.
Yeah.
It was 182.
Okay.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely didn't think it was in the lower 100s. It felt right in kind of maybe just above, but I could see it at 182. Like I said, I think it's salty, but it's also not like a stacks piece or anything like that. It's just kind of this particularly painful beater. So it inherently pushes it towards the back, I think, of the list. But yeah, 182, I could see that. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think it being a little bit expensive, you probably don't see it in every single deck out there, but this is one of those cards where I could see this coming up in casual games and having that exact reaction that we're having, where it's like the turn one Saracen and everybody groans. Everybody says like, that stupid card's not even made for EDH. And you know,
I think,
she doesn't even go here.
I think it's in that whole bucket of cards that make its way onto the salty card list that are cards that are not designed for EDH, and people are frustrated by that. And you know, some players enjoy that aspect where there are these cards that see extra play in the format because they interact with the base rules a little bit differently. But that definitely really gets other players as well.
I get it, man, especially with this one. And especially if like, oh man, if you become the target, that's the real thing. Is like a few turns go by and you're like, sweet, I'm at 32 life. Like, and I've ramped. I've played a single cultivate. Like this
I'm
game
at
fucking
28.
sucks.
Yeah, I've been hit twice. I'm at
Oh yeah,
28, and
28,
I've
28. I
done
can
got
math. I can do
nothing
math.
going on. Yeah, it's rough.
This may be a bit controversial, but I could actually see Sarah Ascendant being bannable because of the fact that it is
Mhm.
such a like specific break against the rules of Commander in the same way a lot of the other banned cards are breaks against the rules of Commander.
Yeah.
Even though it's not so overpowered or so oppressive that you can't play around it or get rid of it, it is like, oh, it's a specific thing that is like doesn't work in this format the way it was originally intended to. And that almost to me feels like valid grounds for banning it.
I can see that.
Maybe I personally like that aspect of Commander when things are busted good, but not so broken that they like win the game. Like this does die to Doomblade, you know? Like it is still just a creature that's
Fair.
killing someone over
Fair.
5 turns, maybe, if they
Yeah.
have no response, you know, and that's just one enemy. So like I think we're talking it up as if it's like crazy powerful, one of the strongest cards. It's not really that, but it is frustrating when you see it come down and it's going to warp, especially how those early turns play out.
Yeah.
Jumping off of what Nick was saying, like we've talked about this in the past. I can't recall when we talked about it, and maybe we just talked about it in person, but there's a lot of cards in Magic that reference life thresholds, like Felidar Sovereign, where you win the game if you have 50 life, I think, or
40.
30 life. Is it?
It's
Oh, it's just
40.
40?
It's 40 or more. So your starting life total counts. It's a 6 drop. So usually
Yeah.
someone can poke you for at least one before then.
So like cards like that, I mean, I think that there would be space to errata those cards and say like it's starting life total plus whatever.
X.
You know,
Yeah.
Sarah Ascendant would be like starting life total plus 10,
Yeah.
and Feldark Sovereign would be starting life total plus 20. In the same vein as like a potential ban, Nick, I think that there could be a potential errata to just bring those in line with the format, and then they're not as broken, and then they do reward you when you're playing those life gain strategies, which
Yeah.
truthfully aren't that popular in EDH and like could probably use some cool rewards too. So, you know,
I think that's a kind of narrow meta thing for us, that those strategies aren't super popular.
Yeah. Aloro is really good, turns out.
Yeah, people play so much life gain that commander damage is an important mechanic in the game.
Right.
You know?
that is true. Yeah.
That's kind of a unique us thing.
But still, I think that could be interesting.
Well, thanks for playing, and that's it for the salty card of the week.
Thanks, Mike.
That was a lovely salty card. And thank you to all the prospectors out there. You know, we are going to shout out our Salt Packet Plus tier patrons. And this week we have Thotimus Prime, Rothbox, Sire Speedy, Bobo Fett, Brandon Mousecop, Chameleon, Brimstone, Captain Cross, Clearbrook, D. Beeson, Gilgamesh, Doug's Dad, Magic Lilith Rose, Ebes, JS Evolved, Kylock, Not a Frog, Pez, Swankub, and Vok. And thank you to all of the other prospectors out there for hanging out with us every single week in the Salt Mine. We really appreciate your support. Appreciate you guys tuning in and, sharing the love of salt on all these funny stories with us. We have a really good time, and we appreciate you guys hanging out with us and having some fun too. If you're looking for more Howling Salt Mine content, you got to check out the Patreon, patreon.com/Howling Salt Mine. We have a fantastic Discord community. You can get into that at our lowest level tier. And as you go up, you're going to get more bonus content like our Extra Salt monthly show that we do, all of our Stray Grains that we do. It's like the weekly content, all the little segments that don't make it into the final episode. We cut them up, we put them in the Stray Grains, and we provide them to the patrons. As you go up, you're getting monthly tokens, and then those higher tiers have the custom drawn tokens from yours truly. Those tiers are full right now, but keep a watchful eye because they do open up and people jump on those slots pretty quickly. But it's a really good time, whether you're just coming in to hang out in the Discord and play games with us on our monthly Patreon game night, or you're looking to have more Howling Salt Mine content in your life. It's kind of got a little bit of everything for you out there. Another way you can support the show is to send us your salty stories and send us your salty confessionals. Send them to us at our Gmail, which is thehowlingsaltmine@gmail.com, or you can use our submission form, which is on our website that I mentioned earlier, howlingsaltmine.com or thehowlingsaltmine.com. Both are going to get you there. Another way you can support the show is to check out our merchandise. We've got shirts on Bonfire. We have playmats on Jank Mats. All of the links are in the show notes. And another way you can help out the show is to give us a 5-star review in your favorite podcast app of choice, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, whatever you're listening to. give us a 5-star review. It's really going to help us stick out in the algorithm.
All those Podbean listeners.
Dude, we got like 17
There's
Podbean
dozens of
listeners.
us.
Beans.
So that really does help. It helps new people find the show. It helps us grow organically. And you know what? Tell a friend about us. If you're playing at the LGS and you have a salty game, kind of laugh it off. Be like, hey, this would be a funny moment to submit to this funny podcast I listen to. So there's a lot of different ways to spread the good word and support us. And for all the people out there that have done it and are doing it currently, we really appreciate it. Lastly, we got to shout him out. Our friend Devin Burnett for giving us this beautiful podcast art that we rock every week. We love the skull, the big flaming skull with the cool glasses, and he's crying his tears, and he's in the little salt minecart. We love him. So if you are ever in Ashland, North Carolina, hit up Devin and get a tattoo because he's a tattooist down there, and he's a really cool guy.
10,000 subscribers are bust.
Thanks, Tony. Wow, it's like he's here in the room with me. Well, Nick, thanks again for jumping on with us, man. Always a good
thank you for
time.
having me. It was fun as always.
As always, everybody, stay salty, and don't forget to draw an additional card during your draw step.
It's the Howling Salt Mine. The Howling Salt Mine.
And started with my playgroup for a follow. There's going to be a lot of those tonight, folks. A lot of mistreats.
Mistreats.
I want to say something, but my mouth is full of food.
Yeah. Request denied. You must say it right now.
No, my mouth. The chicken parm.
Chicky barm barm.
Hold on. I have to pull up the song. I have to get all my coughing out.
Pack up a lung first.
Yeah. Hold on. Here it comes.